All right, everyone. Welcome to the Myokinetic Podcast. Today we have a returning guest, Dave Callari.
Hello.
Yes, I think last time we spoke, we had Dave on. We dove into a lot of nutrition, but today let's really talk more about nutrition and training and how he's able to prioritize his training schedule as a personal trainer and a nutrition coach, and how he's able to keep himself in such a great shape.
Plus where to get the most banging bagels.
Yes, we can do that too. So yes, Dave, welcome back, man.
Thanks for having me.
So yeah, let's get right into it, dude. So obviously, if you guys didn't listen to Dave's first episode, I highly recommend. We'll put it back on the show notes so you can kind of get his background story. And for those who this is the first time, welcome. So Dave, why don't you just give a nice brief introduction of who you are?
20 years more than 20, like 22 years in the industry, which blows my mind to say that out loud right now. Started with New York Sports, now at a place called The Gym in Englewood. I have my own nutrition company called RPM Nutrition. It's all evidence-based. That's all most people should really need to know. Mm-hmm. If you're in this space, if you follow people like Natty or some of our other colleagues, most of us are all evidence-based folks. Mm. And if you get down with one of us in the evidence-based practice, chances are you're going to align with other modalities in evidence-based practice.
Yeah. So I always say in the PT, fitness, nutrition space, the circle is pretty small. Yeah. Especially when you're evidence-driven, mm-hmm. right? Where, when it gets even smaller, especially when you have someone that share the same value, which is a huge thing. So, so talk me through about, your journey. Obviously, you were a trainer before. You mm-hmm. did some dabble into nutrition, but now you're hanging your hat in both realms like really well. So, how do you find balance in both?
They just complement one another, and it's never my intent if I meet a client or I'm talking to somebody. Usually if they come to me for training, they kind of find out about the nutrition side mostly because the logo on the shirt says mm-hmm. fitness and nutrition, and we just kind of talk through that. And they're always aware that it plays a role, it plays a part. One of the easiest things to do if someone comes to me for training is that, for instance, I got a young guy, he's 25, and we started with training, mm-hmm. and we did his in-body, and he had a nice 6-pound swing. He had a 2-pound increase in lean body mass. He had a 4-pound drop in his body fat. Mm-hmm. And I said, listen, that's even without really paying attention to what you're doing nutrition-wise. Mm-hmm. Like, you may have cleaned up your diet a little bit or been more cognizant of what you're doing, but like I didn't give him any guidelines to mm-hmm. start. And then he's like, yeah, he said, what can I start doing better? So now we go into now that we're going to dive into his nutrition a little bit more. And vice versa. If someone comes to me for nutrition and they're making some progress, but maybe their training could be better, or they could just be choosing better things overall, mm-hmm. then we start having those conversations. So all it really takes is for someone to get a little bit, some progress, a few steps here in either one, and then mm-hmm. we can start talking about how the other one really will complement what they're doing. Yeah. If they're trying to get, a very specific goal to get to. So I just kind of leave it to that. Mm-hmm. I leave it to let them go through the paces. If they're doing programming with me, either one, mm-hmm. they make some progress. I said, if you want to start looking at it and honing in on some of the details more, mm-hmm. we can do that too. And most people are like, yes, please.
Yeah, most people want the best bang for their bucks. I mean, that's go hand in hand. Yeah, so I mean, people want the best bang for their bucks. So you can't talk fitness or even aesthetic reason without nutrition. You can't even talk healthy lifestyle without in diving into nutrition. So did you have like a moment where you're like, hey, you know what? I really need to invest more time? Because I know you for a long time, mm-hmm. and I was even talking to my wife yesterday. I was like, she asked me a question like, how do you get into working out? I'm like, oh, that's a good question. I was like, well, I was a little bit chubbier, and I told her I used to watch like wrestling, and mm-hmm. everyone's jacked. I was like, oh, I'm just going to get jacked, and I'm just going to go to the Y. And then...
And they kicked you out when you showed up in your wrestling trunks?
No, but then... And I was like, and then I just kind of really got into it. My group of friends got me into it. Well, I mean, I kind of led the pack. All of us would go to the YMCA. Mm-hmm. after school, and we would watch Pumping Iron right before we go, just to get in a really good zone.
The best pre-workout.
Yep. Techno Explode, original one. And then fast forward, I met you in New York Sport Club. I was like, it's so funny. I was just working out, but I didn't know anything about nutrition. And I got in a really good shape because I met Dave. And I also learned how to do legs for the first time when I met Dave. So it was a huge thing. And I was like, when I met you, that's when I got like really lean. I went from like 170 pudgy to like 140, I think 145.
Oh, wow.
I mean, I got down there. So back to the original question, because of that, like, I mean, back then I think you were still more on, if I'm allowed to say, like more bodybuilding driven. And fast forward within, I think the past like 5-6 years, when you started RPM, that's when I see like, oh wow, Dave's really rebranding, he's more nutrition focused. So like, was there a specific moment for you that drove you to start RPM?
Yeah, I was working one day at the gym in Montvale, and I've been very, very fortunate to be able to do this for as long as I have, like as an actual career to make a living. And it was one of my clients who've been with me for years, and they are in a position that they can afford it. It's disposable income, and she trains with me like clockwork 3 days a week for 10 years. And one of the reasons she does is because she's like, I will not work out by myself. Like, I need this. Otherwise, it's not going to happen. And as I get older, I need to do it more. And then I just kind of thought, like, man, this could, like, people could lose a job. Things change. Like, people move away, whatever. I'm like, this could change at any moment for me. Like, how am I going to bring more value to my clientele? And at the time, we didn't have any nutrition program at the gym. We had, and I think it did okay. It was E3 or Apex, like whatever.
Oh my God,
Apex. However you feel about it, like it's at least it gets something. It's the cost of admission is very low for that. So I just started diving into getting back into research and talking to my clientele more about their nutrition. And then I had another client. She was really struggling with putting on weight we had previously lost. And I said, listen, there's some things I'm trying to work on. Can I show you? Can I give you some of this coaching? And she was like, yeah, my God, because she was literally in tears crying to me. Like she didn't know what to do or what she wanted to do. So I was like, it was going to be okay. Let's just start doing this. And then she was able to pull all that weight back off. And then that's kind of how it started, just wanting to deliver more value. And then I didn't like want to be the best. I just wanted to be the most informed. So it was just diving into research. As I made friends with some big names in the industry through social media, that's where I just kept going. There's just always more to learn. There's always more people, clients that you work with that can help you be better because you're trying to figure their stuff out. And there's just so much misinformation. I mean, you know how much nonsense is out there. So I just feel the more informed you can be, you don't necessarily have to like call people out, be like, oh, this guy said this and that's wrong. Yeah. I think it's just best to just present what you know and present it as like, this is the data, this is the evidence that we have so far. This is why it's beneficial to you, and this is what you should be paying attention to. And then eventually your audience and your clientele kind of finds you. Yeah.
And I love the concept of obviously providing more value. And we align in that sense, especially like where we are right now at Myokinetics. Like, I'm always asking, like, what can we do to serve the people that we're working with right now? So obviously with me, it started off in fitness field, and then I went to PT school, right? And it all started with, hey, my clients get hurt. I don't know how to help them. How can I help them? Well, I mean, really, PT know how to help them. And I went through PT myself. It's like, oh, I know it works. And then from there, I'm just building more value. And now we're at the point where, first I started off with just working with active population, right? And then we segue into, hey, let's work with athletic population, ACL rehab, right? Hence the book. And then now, we're adding on to it. So we now have active adult, active athletes. So now we're even, all right, now let's go active older adults. So adding more value into that. And now I'm super proud of this, where this month we started launching, pelvic floor.
Really?
Yeah. So for, active female athletes, even like postpartum stuff. Like these are things that, again, more value for the clients that we're currently seeing, and these are also underserved population. And I could definitely argue that the nutrition field is super underserved, especially if you're looking at the difference between dietitian and nutritionist, right?
Yeah.
And there's that. I had a good friend that came on here. She's a dietitian, and she has her own online coaching as well. And she was able to explain the difference between nutrition coach and dietitian. Where there's more credentialing with dietitian, and I think with a nutritionist like yourself, who holds it value really high to a high standard, you're gonna behave as if they were acting boards that overseeing you. Where most people now, they can just go on a weekend seminars and then say, oh, now I'm a nutritionist.
Yep. Let me write some meal plans. Let me do this. And it's so much more than that.
So obviously last time we talked more about the psychological, I guess, background when it comes to changing habits, when it comes to eating the right stuff. So for you personally, I think that's what I want to dive down more today is how do you yourself with working, I mean, I've seen you at the gym at 5, you still,
that's AM folks, not PM.
Yep, and you're still working out. How do you navigate those things where you train your clients at 5 a.m., you still get your workout in, you still do your cardio, you still make sure you're eating the right thing? Like, how do you do it? How do you find the time? And what are some strategies that you did to make sure you are successful?
Yeah, it's funny because I had a guy who was seeing me upwards of every day, 5 times a week at 5 a.m. And he is a stunt coordinator for a TV show, and the season's over, so he went back home. And last year, he was doing like 7 a.m. That's cool. I can do 7 a.m. And then it progressively got earlier and earlier and earlier. And then we just kind of settled on 5. And it was not terrible, but it just was a matter of like, okay, this guy's at 5. I made it a point in my schedule that I just block off 6 to 7. That's my time. And what I really appreciated is that anybody who would see me on the floor asked if I had time. They saw me that as soon as I was finished with him, I would go do my own thing, and then I would get back on the floor training clients. So like, listen, I know you have your own time in the morning, and I don't want to interrupt that. So what do you have for me? So it really just came down to treating myself kind of like my own client. Like, this is my time, this is my block off, and then I just get right back to work. As far as my nutrition goes, it was very easy for me to find things that fit into whatever mode I'm in, where am I maintaining? Am I in like a small fat loss phase or whatever? So I have a bunch of foods that fit into my day where I can have them really quickly in between clients, do it. And then by the time I get to go home, then it's like, okay, then I can start to make things that take a little more preparation. I have to cook them or whatever. So it was just a matter of just finding if I know what my goal is, and a goal doesn't have to be some all-encompassing like, oh, I need to put on 10 pounds of muscle or drop 20. It's just, what's your daily goal?
Yeah.
I need to do my work, do my workout, and make sure my nutrition's on point. So if you just treat them as part of things like that are a part of your schedule that you can really be detailed about, you just do that. Like, what are you trying to do by the end of the day? Okay, reverse engineer that to figure that out.
Now, with your clients who, could be super busy, has multiple kids, what do you tell them? How do you work with them to make sure, like, hey, you need to time block?
Sell the kids and just sleep upstairs, and then they come downstairs to the gym. No, most of them are also really good about the ones I have that have younger kids. They make a very concerted effort. Some of them would do. One of them would come in, like if I have a husband and wife. One of them would come in, leave, drive the daughter to school, and then the other parent would come in. So that's just a conversation that they have at home. Like, I usually don't have to get involved in that. And if anything ever comes up, I will bring up like, okay, you can't come in because of XYZ. What's preventing that? Not that I'm trying to get like myself an extra session, but I'm really trying to help people see that there are ways to figure things out if you're willing to, I don't want to say make sacrifices, but like trying to figure out a way to like maybe have your mother come and watch the baby for like an hour a day. Yeah. Like, that's not the end of the world. The grandmother gets to spend time with the kids, and then you get to do your own thing and you go right back to it. And I think a lot of people in that sense, they lose sight of the fact that like you still got to take care of yourself. So just, they always need to know that they're still allowed to come first. And then everything else can kind of fall into place. Once they've done their thing, then they get back to doing the parenting or the husband, wife, or whatever. But do the things that matter to you also.
Yeah. I think most people have this narrative in their head that's stopping them from doing the things that they want. And I was speaking at length about this with a friend of mine who has 2 kids. And, we're just talking about like, hey, at the end of the day, you still need to do these things to make yourself feel fulfilled and feel good about yourself. It's not, I feel like most parents, from what I've gathered from all my friends, like they want to spend more time with their kids, but there's also a quality and quantity aspect of it. If you spend 24 hours and it's like crappy quality, it's not the best. Like, get a babysitter, go for an hour, and then, when you come back, you feel fulfilled, you're a better person, your work. I always like to put myself first in a way where I know that if I just put myself in a good position, everyone that come in contact with me will be better off for it. Like my wife knows not to talk to me until I meditate. Or if I don't meditate, I'm not going to be as centered as I want to be. And I'm not going to be able to give her a good solution. I can't be a good husband. I can't do a lot of things, right? So time blocking is huge. And, to me, there's time where we have patients who come in, like they at the tail end of their plan of care, and we still ask them they want to come in for like a month-to-month checkup. It's not because we want to just keep them in here. It's because we're the only source of accountability that they have. And we're the only source of a friendly reminder to be like, hey, put yourself first. Hey, for once a month, you can come in, you can talk to us, you can say, hey, what's working, what's not working, or just a quick reminder like, hey, remember that worked well? Why don't you go back and doing that? Because human beings funny, man. Like when things work well, we just stop doing them. I don't know why. It's like that meme of that guy riding a bike and he just put a stick in front of his wheel, and you're like, oh no.
I think people are used to adversity and being like, oh well, I can't keep progressing because of insert stick into the wheel, instead of finding a balance that really works. And being fulfilled and loving everything they're doing, whether it's their workout and then they get to, go home and spend time with the kids, or, maybe they go at night and they get to, tuck them in, read them a story, whatever it is. Even if something as simple as, hey, I get to take my dog for a half-hour walk, whatever the hell it is that you need to do. You have to, serving yourself sounds selfish, but you have to serve yourself, because if you don't, then you're always serving everybody else. It's like, where do you get your fulfillment? If you're not fulfilled, you can't always continually give without filling up the tank again. So what are we trying to do? You know what I mean?
It's a boundary thing. I feel like people having a hard time saying no. I think you need to exercise the no muscle. Just tell people no. And as I'm getting older and older, I am more set in my ways as I'm becoming grumpier and grumpier, where I say no to a lot of things. I mean, if it doesn't align with my schedule, it's rarely I'm saying yes to. Okay. And it's not that I'm being extra high maintenance. Is that if I want to see a friend of mine, I make sure that we align our schedule, and when I'm there, I'm all in. There's no guilt. I'm not thinking about work in the back of my head, and that's not what I'm trying to do, right? Where most people, they would, have a soft yes and a soft no at the same time. So if you have a soft yes where you're going to take care of yourself and you feel guilty about it, at the gym, you're not going to get the best, right? Or when you're at PT, you're not getting the best of what it is that you're doing. It's like people trying to be good at everything. At the end, you're just not good at anything.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's more of like a conversation between your ears that you need to have, and then talk to your partner to be like, hey, I need to do this. Can you support me on that? And as a husband, I know if my wife's happy, I am a lot happier.
It's not difficult, and I think when people talk about self-care, they need to realize that. Again, I don't think it's selfish. I think you just have to look after yourself in terms of just doing what fulfills you, and then you can listen to when your spouse needs to like actually bend your ear on something, and you can give constructive feedback. You guys can do the things together. You can take care of your your daughter, your son, whatever it is. You can do the other things on your responsibility list with a much clearer head, and know that you took care of you did what you need to do. You're going to feel better mentally. You're going to feel better physically. And then you can just go through and do everything else and just do it all over again the next day. It's great.
Yeah. So let's switch gear to a more complicated part of your life when you had your bicep tear, right? Again, from the first podcast. Ever since then, I had definitely more questions, because training, working out is part of your livelihood, is part of your habits. And obviously you weren't able to do that for 6 months?
Well, 3 days.
I mean, to the intensity that you would like.
Yeah, probably maybe like 6 weeks before I was able to start really giving the left side, which was the side I tore, some intensity. But I started as quickly as I could, as quickly as was cleared. But there was definitely a big gap. So like as soon as the brace came off and I was able to start being active, I got back up to a very specific point where like the muscle came back and my arm didn't look like spaghetti anymore. But then there was a big gap between that and when I got back to like 100%.
Yeah.
And that just got back into being consistent with the training, making sure you're doing what you're doing. I did do some massage therapy and stuff like that too, because it hurt a lot. But, so it did take a while to get back to like 100%. But like I said, there was a very quick jump in the beginning, then a big break, and then I kind of progressed after that. And
how did you have that conversation with yourself where most people, right, when they're injured, they go, I'm injured, I can't work out. If I can't work out at the same intensity I used to work out, I might as well just not go. So because I'm not going, well, since I'm not working out, I might as well just eat like crap. And it's just literally a bad cycle.
Just the domino effect. And it's terrible. I've seen people like that. And it's unfortunate, and you can't really get into anybody else's head other than to ask questions like, like my legs worked fine. Everything from the right side worked fine. And I just wasn't about to be like, okay, it's just a roadblock. Like it was probably the best case scenario for a really crappy injury. Like I didn't tear the muscle. It was just got to re-anchor the tendon and then let it heal. Yeah. So why would I let that stop me? Like it was an enjoyable thing. Working out is still enjoyable for me. Like I still look forward to it. I still look forward to ways I can challenge myself, how to do different setups, like just diving in, like putting the stuff I read and the research into practice. So why would I stop doing that? Just keep doing it and then just be smart about it. And I was able to learn about myself. I was able to learn about how much therapy, if you do it right and you listen to your therapist, how much it can really, 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 really help you. So even though I've never not believed in physical therapy, I've been able to come at people who need to do their therapy better from my own perspective, to really be like, listen, like whatever they're telling you, this is probably the best thing for you. I know it may be boring, it may suck, but at the same time, don't be afraid to be your own advocate. Like if you think you're not getting anything out of it, you're entitled to ask for another therapist or go somewhere else. Like find people that are going to challenge you and get you better, because this is important. You know me, how many people do I recommend? There's maybe like 4 people in all the different areas of fitness that I would look to. My referral chart is really, really small. So I think that helped. That's one of the things that helped me the most, was being able to tell people how important getting into therapy is if you need it. Yeah. And, it gives you a more touch point, right? People can understand. Like when people look at you, they just assume like, hey, Dave, you got it made, man. This is easy for you. It's genetics. Nothing take away. I was always in shape. I was never injured, yada, yada, yada. It's like, no, I was a fat little kid and I tore the tendon off my arm at one point. Like, so now you can relate a little bit more. And I would just, you brought up a really good point that people do have the right to switch therapists. Like you literally can, you have the right to, and that's how it is. I wrote a post last week was, people spend more time vetting out their barber / hairstylist than they do when it comes to their physical therapist or even like their healthcare provider. And it's kind of, it's funny to me, but also sad at the same time. And I would even argue that
when people get hurt, PT is like the last thing they would come to their mind, right? So that's the narrative I'm trying to change for my field, right? So as soon as someone have a back pain, you say, hey, I have a back pain. Who do you think I should go see? In their head, it would be like, well, I got to go see my physician first. Then I'm going to go see a chiropractor. Then I'm going to go see a massage therapist. Then maybe I'll go see a PT.
Maybe you slip a physiatrist in there too somewhere.
Exactly.
You're like, wait, what?
Because, as a field in general, PT, we're not really the best at telling people what we do. I don't know why. But again, not me. Like, I really take pride in the work that we do. And the team that we have is world class. And I know they deliver good outcomes. So that's why I have no problem, obviously, being on the podcast saying why we, deliver the best care and why we have so much confidence behind what we do. But as a field in general, we're spending too much time bickering, and that's literally any healthcare professional in general, and even in nutrition. I'm sure they see that all the time. Like you go, flexible dieting versus whatever, like what's intuitive eating, right? Like I'm sure there's so much debate going on.
I had one of my clients is an RD, and she sent me a screenshot of somebody. She posted something in her stories on Instagram. It was like, oh, here's a quick, easy meal that I did for myself. Now she's pregnant, so her food stuff changes a little bit, but it was like maybe some roasted chicken she made, and she had these hot peppers and something else I forget. Anyway, she was calling the vegetables a carbohydrate, and she sends me a text message. She's like, "Hey, would you call vegetables a carb?" I was like, "Well, technically they are. Yeah. Like, what's the problem?"
Yeah.
And she said her friend, who's also a dietitian, was like, she sent me the screenshot and said, I take a little bit of an issue with you calling vegetables a carb because of blah blah blah. Like it's insignificant. And I was like, why is she even caring about that? But it's like, no, man, like the facts are that it's this. How you decide to deal with, is it inconsequential, whatever, it depends on the person you're dealing with. But that's a fact.
Yeah.
So I don't understand why people who weren't even having a conversation suddenly had an argument. You know what I mean? In the same exact field.
You hear that? As soon as you say vegetables are carbohydrate, we have an alarm going off in the back.
Oh, yeah?
That's beeping. So someone's listening. I don't get into debate with anyone, because when people get into debate, they usually have their mind made up already. If you want to have a good conversation, great. Shoot me a message. Let's talk about it.
Usually I feel
in the comments though, those people are,
if a debate's going to happen from either side, I think generally it'll be okay if it starts with a question.
Yeah.
With not a loaded question where they're trying to bait you into an answer so they can. Of course. But if they're like, oh, well, that's very interesting. Like, can you explain that to me? Then I know the person's willing to sit and listen. Or if that's how I ask, that's because I want to know. I want to hear what you have to say. And we go from there.
Yeah.
I'm never into arguing with anybody. I don't care.
Yeah. So if you were to give a recommendation for someone who clearly wants to clean up their eating habits and wants to start somewhere, how would you get that going? I mean, it's a loaded question.
Yeah, it is. I think one of the first things I would do is asking how they feel in general about their nutrition, and not in so much like, do you think you eat good or you eat bad, but how do you physically feel? When you eat, do you feel nourished? Do you feel satisfied? Do you feel like it's serving you? Do you feel like you're energetic? Do you have fuel to go throughout the day? And if they can start to answer that, like I want to know how they feel physically, then we can start to talk about what are some of their food choices? What's their meal timing like? It's because that doesn't really matter, but sometimes people can throw themselves off by, a lot of people think you're not supposed to eat after like 6 o'clock, which is nonsense. But, maybe they haven't eaten that much for the day and they have like a meal at 5:30 and like, oh, it's after 6, I shouldn't eat. And they go the whole evening hungry, and then they end up binging on something. And it's like that, just because they're unsure, it just sets them into like this weird pattern. So I probably would usually start like, how do you feel? Like, how do you feel with your nutrition now? And they'll tell me, and then we just kind of go from there.
Yeah, I think that's a good start, because most people, when they want to lose weight, they would just go on some sort of crash diet. They'll go keto, intermittent fasting, whatever it is, and then they'll just do the extreme. So, I mean, I've been there where you have to do the extreme, but, it's not sustainable. And at this point, all I'm trying to do is just like stay in a really, really good shape. And I'm in this mindset where I'm like, oh man, whatever I have right now could possibly be the best. Like, I'm really trying to maintain this as much as I can. But that doesn't mean I'm lazy with my workout. I have more intent behind it. Not as high intensity, not as high volume, but I'm just smarter with it. And the way I eat stuff now, I'm more vigilant. And again, my dad passed away when he was super young. So I have that genetic component playing against me. So every time I do stuff, every time I eat things, I am more aware, because food is emotional for me. I love food. And, and plus, food is like a bonding experience, right? If you come from a big family, big household, you're Asian, everything you do is food. Italian, I mean, every culture is all about food, right? So food can because it's so emotional, I have to really try to look at it logically, where like, hey, am I eating this because I want to eat it? Or if I want to eat it, is it because I'm bored, right? And I allow myself where I'll set up the goals for the week that I have to do objectively. If I accomplish them, I'm like, hey, I'm going to have this food to treat me. So like most people will reward themselves in like, I don't know, going out or something. I'm just trying to have a poke bowl or I'm trying to have a bagel. Like today, like I was telling you, I haven't had a bagel in like a year. So I'm like, oh man, bagel's good. So that's where I'm at when it comes to food. And I think people need to be able to recognize it. We're having this legit first world problem because we have too much food. We don't have to go hunt for them anymore.
Right. No Liver King status here.
Yeah.
I've had a lot of people recently, and I don't know if it's because they pay attention to me or it's how we discuss what they're trying to do, but most people are dissatisfied with the amount of snacking they do. Again, not a bad thing, but a lot of them are like, I'm not even hungry. I just do it because I'm bored. Or I'm not really sure what I should be doing.
Yeah.
Okay. So then we start to look at that. Like, what are you snacking on? What times are you snacking on it? If you're someone who does it like while you're working from home, is it because you're stressed? Like then we start to dive into why those things are happening. And then they're like, my people are really good at pulling out like, yeah, I'm not hungry. Oh, it's because of this. Okay. So now let's try to figure out some coping strategy or other emotional outlet for whatever's causing that. And let's figure it out.
Yeah.
And then sometimes if you even say like, well, if you got rid of the snacking on the goldfish that your kids are eating, which are still delicious, then you could have like that bigger piece of salmon at dinner. Like there's ways to get them to understand like it's not bad, but it's not serving you in the moment or serving you where you want to go. So let's figure out how to get better coping strategies for snacking and things like that. And then you can shift those calories to other foods that you really, really want to eat and you'll actually get something out of.
I work pretty much long days. So on the day that I didn't get to pack my food, let's say I have to run to CVS. I have 3 or 4 choices of snack that I would get. And that's my automatic thing. Like, oh, I'm going to get these kind of bar. I'm going to get this and that. So that way I'm not venturing into like Pringles.
Yeah. Like, oh, Wendy's. I have to pass the Wendy's. Let's stop.
Yeah.
Although you can get a grilled chicken sandwich and a large chili, and those are some banging numbers. There's a lot of protein, a little bit of carbohydrate, a little bit of fat, calories, not that much.
Yeah, no, the chili is good. So, I mean, I think that's great information just for people to get started. And I think, obviously, we don't have to say this, but hiring a coach, getting someone that you obviously understand their message and that they're going to work well with, that you're going to work well with, is probably the best key to success. Like, just like with us, we interview the patient before they come to us to make sure that we're the right fit, right? Because that's how you succeed. So with the people who are looking to get started, how do you go about them finding the right coach and people? Because there are gazillion people online that are now nutritionists.
Yeah, I'm because I'm one of the few people that you can find that like will actually still see people in person. I'm usually the 3rd or 4th person that they've come to because they have not been happy with whoever they've used. And most people, they just don't know any better, and it's not really their fault. I fault the coaches who are just trying to make a buck. Or because they did a bodybuilding show, or they kind of figured out how to use MyFitnessPal. They're like, oh, I'm a macro coach. Man, macro coach is such a dumb term. Like, you know how to add. That's really it. add and subtract. You can count. Good job. The count from Sesame Street would be very, very happy. One, two, and he'd be super happy.
Yeah.
But nutrition is so much more than that. People come to me and they're like, what? I got the guy today. He's like, well, what do you prefer? I'm like, really, whatever is going to work for you.
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, but like, what do you usually like to do? Whatever is going to work for you. And he's like, and I'm like, dude, I know you're looking for an answer. You're looking for me to tell you to do X, Y, and Z, but I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
I said, and we went over macros. I'm like, this is how this stuff works. But not everyone likes to do that. Not everyone wants to get out a pen and paper and pull the app up. I'm like, I think that holds merit because it gives you an idea of portion sizes, how you would construct a day to meet the goals that you're trying to actually hit. I said, but long term, I said, I don't think that's a great strategy for anybody. I said, but we have to figure out what's going to work. And I explained to him, because he brought up intermittent fasting. And I said, well, this is really how this works well for some people. If you have, a 16-hour day, it's much more difficult to eat X amount of calories in only 4 hours as it is in 16. I'm like, that's really all it is. So all it is trying to figure out what's going to work for that person, for their lifestyle, what are their goals, and that's it.
Yeah. I mean, it's mirror pretty much our processes. Like the people that we see were like their last hope in a way, where they went through so many different PTs before. They haven't had pain for over 6 months, doesn't get any better. And now they're just lost, right? And then again, same process is like, hey, your goal is going to pretty much dictate how we care for you, right? And then we'll be there to guide you throughout this whole journey that you want to be on. So I love hearing that. And while I have you here, I think we should let the cat out of the bag a little bit. We've been working behind the scene. So, Dave and I has been talking for 3-4 months now about obviously bringing on some nutrition stuff into Myokinetics in more of a masterclass series, really. I think it's for someone that, is unsure what to do. And to me, there's no better way to start, working on.
So this should probably be called Nutrikinetics.
Oh, wow. That's
copyrighted? Why it should be now.
Yeah, exactly. And to me, there's no better way to start dial everything in when you're injured. Like you're revamping, you're building your new habits already. You're getting a lot of feedback from your body. So why not just revamp everything together? Because go hand in hand.
Yeah.
Right. We're trying to build you up from scratch. Right. Like literally build good foundation. So that way, when you're done with your rehab, you're getting go back to the gym or whatever it is. Your nutrition's dialed in. Right. So obviously, I'll let you take the floor on that one since you're the mastermind behind it.
So many people, I think, when they get injured, like you said, they either decide to just phone it in, take a vacation, no activity, diet, whatever. But when people immediately start to say like, I'm gonna eat whatever I want, like that's for me, it's kind of a red flag already, because you should already be eating whatever you want. You just need to know how it fits into what you're trying to do, and that will end up speaking to de-demonizing foods, pulling that stigma off of, McDonald's or, pretzel or whatever. Pick whatever food you think is terrible. Some of the idiots are like, oh, grapes are bad. Yeah, sure. Okay.
If you're allergic to them.
Yeah. That's the only time things are bad is when you're allergic to them.
Yeah.
Like gluten, is it bad? No. Are you allergic to it? Stay away from it.
Yeah.
That's all. So I think that it would really help people to get in, to really connect with how their body is, one, healing from their injury, how they can fuel themselves. But as you know, if your nutrition's on point and you're getting what you need, chances are you're going to heal a lot faster too. And then they could mitigate, obviously, because if they're injured, their daily activity is going to be down. So then you could mitigate any kind of weight gain or anything that's going to happen. And you can kind of just get in a really tight holding pattern until you can do great in therapy. And then by the time you're ready to get back to the gym, you've learned maybe what calories are, what's energy balance, what's a deficit, what are my maintenance calories? What does that even mean? How do you calculate that? Like all the things that, if you've been paying attention to like fitness-based social media, you've probably heard these terms 1,000 times, but there's a really good chance you don't understand any of them. Or somebody presented a really, really piss poor explanation of what some of these things are. So I want to try to educate your audience and your patients on just the real basic stuff that they can take from step 1 to step 2 to step 3 to like step 10 on their own. Or if they want to hang out with me some more, then I'm game. That's what we're going to do.
Yeah. And it just makes perfect sense because people, again, like
it's a captive audience too. Like, cause if you're here getting, if you can't go anywhere, because you're injured.
And the crazy thing with injury is that people use that as a pivoting point to create their own pitfall. And what I'm trying to do is change that narrative to like, no, actually, this is like a beginning of a new journey.
Yeah.
Right. And hey, one of the posts I was crafting this morning is like pain and injury give you an opportunity to correct the things you are doing or add in something you are not doing. Right. And from there, like with that same narrative, that same optics, adding nutrition would make sense because, hey, listen, you're rehabbing already. You have time. You can really understand. You always going to need nutrition if you're active, no matter what. The people we work with, they're super active. They're an athlete, at the age of 55 or whatever it is, or in college and high school. You need to know these things, right? And nutrition principles are like movement principle. Doesn't matter what age you're in. You need to know them, right? And for us, like our 3-step process, right? Recover, rebuild, redefine. So from recover and rebuild, that's when you really learn your nutrition, hold it in. By the time you come out of your rehab, you are now redefined into different kind of athlete. You are now a more seasoned athlete who has more body awareness when it comes to their body mechanic. But now you also mentally know, hey, when I'm in season, I'm going to eat this, right? Or if you're a runner, hey, it's marathon season, I need to eat this. Am I just going to down tons of pasta because my neighbor did it? Like maybe his body type is totally different than yours, right? Maybe you respond differently to a certain food, right? Maybe let's get to work with someone, right? You're working with a professional just like us. Now you get to work with someone like you to really, take you to the next level. Use this time as, a redefinition of who you are as a person. So I think I'm super pumped for it. I know this is something we're looking to launch later this year, and we're gonna deliver it in. I think in such an good online platform where it's just like a self-learning pace. I think I mean, what are some goals that you would like to share to the listener that when they go through this course that we created? What are some key takeaways that you want them to be able to do?
One of the biggest things, I want them to be able to look at food without fear and like a real understanding of what it's going to do for them. They can look at a food and be like, well, those are my proteins. These are my carbs. These are my fats. I know why I need each one and I know how it's going to affect me and why I need it. And just removing all that nonsense of like, I can't eat that because of insert some stupid, assumption here. Yeah. That's really my ultimate goal, is to help people remove, like, it's like you're driving over the bridge and the fog breaks. Like, oh, I can see everything now. That's really what I want. Because the minute you can start to understand that you don't need to be afraid of any of that stuff, you can really start to get into the nitty gritty of like, well, if I add this and add this, get rid of this and do this, move this here, then all of a sudden it's like, oh, I'm progressing faster. My injuries are healing better. Any of that stuff. That's really probably my ultimate thing, to take the stupid fear out of food shopping, cooking, eating. I have so many people like, they feel bad telling me the snacks they eat because they think I'm going to, turn them over and hit them on the butt with the rule. I'm like, no, that's not what we're trying to do. Yeah. So that would probably be like my biggest ultimate thing, is to remove the fear and really give them some education so they feel like they're armed with information when either they're going out to eat, going food shopping, cooking for themselves with family, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I love that. I mean, it's for us, again, for me, it's the fear of movement, right? That's, you got hurt doing certain thing. Let's get you strong enough where you can overcome those fears. So there's always a scene in my mind in Home Alone, when he went downstairs, he see this like heater and he's like afraid of it. And then he saw it again. He's like, I'm not afraid anymore. And that's what we're really trying to do, is it's really curate that kind of space for people who obviously it's a lot of biopsychosocial stuff, and we want people to feel super confident in what they're putting in their body and what they're doing outside to build up their strength and their resiliency as they're getting back to the activity that they love, so that way they can be the best version of themselves. They can still keep up with their kids, grandkids, or they can keep up with their peers, their competitors, right? And I think I'm super excited to embark on this journey. And I know obviously when you guys are listening to this, we'll have more information, and you can always email us and we'll get you on the wait list, because I know it's going to be pretty fun. So I guess with that being said, Dave, I mean, thank you so much, man. I really appreciate it. It's always a good time. Again, for the audience that listens to the first time, where can they find you?
They can find me on social at RPM_nutrition. I'm really only on Instagram. I have a Facebook, but I'm not 60 yet, so I don't use Facebook that much. And Twitter, who knows what's going on with Twitter right now anyway. And TikTok's a dumpster fire. So Instagram is where I do most of my content posting. And then if you're in the area and want to come see me in person, you can see me at the gym in Englewood. It's 20 Nordhoff Place in Englewood, New Jersey.
Perfect. Thank you so much, man. We'll put everything in the show note, and then obviously we'll have you on some more.
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you, dude.
All right, man.